He gave everything, and in the end, he was left alone, as if he had never amounted to anything. This is not just a sad story. It's a cruel reminder of real life, a story of invisible sacrifice, of silent love, of work without recognition, and of a pain that many have felt, but few have had the courage to tell. Today, you will learn the story of an ox, but not just any ox. An animal that dedicated its entire life to a man, who carried weight, planted a future, helped build what the boss has today. And even so, when he no longer had any strength, he was abandoned as if he were disposable, as if everything he did had no meaning. This story is more than about one animal. It's about ingratitude, about those who only see you while you serve. It's about the silence of those who give everything and expect at least a little care when they can no longer carry the world on their shoulders. They say that the ox doesn't speak, but does his pain need words to be understood? This ox had a name, there was a routine, he had a memory, and above all, he had a faithful heart. He woke up before the sun, tied to his plough, pulling weight under the scorching sun, without complaining, without stopping, day after day, without rest. And even though he was tired, he returned with calm eyes, with that look of someone who just wanted some water, shade, and maybe a gesture of affection. And the boss, the man he served for so many years, always silent, always cold. He gave orders, demanded strength, demanded more, but he never looked that animal in the eyes like someone recognizing a companion, because for him the ox was just another tool, an object, something that could be replaced when it was no longer useful. But the ox didn't see the world like that. He trusted, he obeyed. He believed, as many of us do, that when we give our all, we will be rewarded with respect, care, gratitude. But the truth is that life doesn't always return what we give. Effort is not always recognized, and this story is not just about the field, the plow, or the sweat. It's about people, about how many times we ourselves have been like this ox. We gave ourselves, we helped, we were there for someone, and when we needed it most, we were left behind. The saddest thing about this story is not the abandonment, it's the time he still spent waiting to be remembered, lying in a corner of the pasture, already old, weak, with his eyes losing their shine. He waited. The sound of the boss's footsteps, a voice, a sign that he still mattered, but nothing came. Just the wind and oblivion. And you know what hurts most? It's just that this happens every day, with animals and with people. This story is not just a thrill, it's something to reflect on. Because sometimes what you call a simple animal or someone is precisely the one who helped you the most to get to where you are. And the silence, oh, the silence of that ox said it all. Because not every scream needs sound. Sometimes the look speaks more than any words. But what happened to him? What was done after so much time of loyalty, effort, and unconditional love? The most painful part is yet to come. After that day, the silence began to take its toll. The ox no longer had the same strength, and the field seemed to feel it. The plough was still cutting the land, but without the same firmness, without the same rhythm that had previously made the master proud. His footprints on the ground were lighter, his steps slower, as if the earth was giving back little by little the weight of all the years of sacrifice. But no one noticed. The boss just frowned, irritated, thinking that the animal was getting lazy, that age was an excuse. He didn't see what was behind that tired body. He didn't notice the silent signs of exhaustion, the long looks towards the corral, the long stops on the riverbank, where the ox remained motionless, just watching the reflection of his own image trembling in the water. It was a disguised cry for help, but who listens to the silence of an animal? Maybe the boss thought he didn't feel anything. That pain, fear, and loneliness were human things, but the ox felt it. I felt the cold of indifference, the weight of forgetfulness, the absence of a gesture of recognition. I felt abandonment approaching, slowly, like the evening that steals the light little by little, without us noticing. Once, a child who lived on the farm approached him. He brought a handful of fresh grass and a curious look. "Why is he sad, Dad?" he asked. The man, without even turning his head, replied, "Sad? Animal doesn't get sad, boy. He's tired, that's all." "Utai." But the child saw what the adult did not see. That deep, still look seemed to ask for something that had no name. It seemed like a silent cry for help, a desire to be seen. Days later, the ox began to move away. In the morning, when the sun hadn't even touched the pasture, he lingered in the corral. He kept looking at the horizon, as if waiting for something to come from there. A sign, perhaps, a memory. And he stopped chewing and just looked. It was a kind of sadness that not even the wind could carry away. The farm workers noticed, but no one said anything. Each one stuck in their own routine under the weight of obligations. It's always like this. Silent pain is the easiest to ignore because it doesn't bother anyone. And the more he remained silent, the more the boss's gaze hardened. "This animal is causing me harm," he said. "It's no longer any use." These words, spoken without thinking, cut deeper than the whip. And if you've ever been someone who gave it their all and in the end was told that they were no longer useful, you know exactly what this bull felt. His body was still there, but his heart was starting to fade away. He stopped reacting, responding to calls. The food no longer had any taste. The water was no longer refreshing. His world was getting smaller. First the field, then the corral, then just that corner, where he lay down, looking at nothing. The boss didn't understand. He only saw numbers, work, productivity. He never looked at the ox as a traveling companion, but rather as a tool for profit. And that's precisely where ingratitude arises, when we forget that even what serves us has a soul. Some days the ox would try to show that something was wrong. He didn't pull the plow, stop halfway, or make a strange sound, almost a whine. The boss, irritated, just flicked his whip in the air. "Come on, hurry up, lazy bones!" But that sound wasn't stubbornness. It was pain. It was tiredness. It was the body asking for rest and the heart asking for care. It was the kind of request the modern world has forgotten how to hear. Who knows? If the boss had looked into his eyes for a second, he would have seen the mirror of his own loneliness. Because, in a way, they were both alone. One surrounded by oxen, the other surrounded by walls, but both stuck in the same cold cycle of giving and demanding, without ever stopping to feel. Time passed. And with it came the rains, the seasons, the wear and tear. The ox was already limping on one of its legs and sometimes tripped in the mud. Still, he tried to continue. It was as if he wanted to prove that he could still be useful, which was still worth something. How many times have you tried to prove the same, that you still deserved to be there, even when no one believed in you anymore? That's why this story speaks to so many people, because we've all been that bull at some point. Trying to show that we still have value, that we still have strength, even when life has already made us bleed inside. And then came the cold days. The pasture became thin, the water became rare. The boss, concerned only with profits, began thinking about replacing the ox. "I've already given what I had to give," he murmured. But he was still there, waiting, faithful, believing that perhaps he could still be remembered. One morning, the ox tried to get up and couldn't. The legs failed. The body no longer responded. He fell slowly with a low, almost human groan. The sound echoed across the field, but no one came. Nobody listened, or rather, no one wanted to listen. The boss passed by in the distance, saw the animal lying down and turned his face. "We'll see about that later," he said. But that after never came. For days the ox remained there, motionless, looking at the horizon as if waiting for something that would never come. The sun burned his back, the rain wet his tired body, and he just waited. I expected a gesture, a look, a memory. It's sad to think that love and loyalty don't die at once. They die little by little when they are ignored. Perhaps deep down, the ox still believed that he would be taken to a better place, a clean pasture, a cool shade. Maybe he imagined that the boss would come with a rope, calling him by name, and that everything would be fine. But time only brought the sound of the wind and the smell of solitude. And if you've ever waited for something from someone, an apology, an acknowledgement, a simple word, and it never came, then you understand exactly that pain. There are times when silence weighs more than screaming, and his was heavy. It weighed like the plow he had pulled for years, like the memories that were now his only company. The other animals on the farm walked by and looked at him curiously. Some approached, smelled, and then followed. Nature continues, even when the heart stops, but his gaze followed the horizon, fixed, patient, broken. The boss, from afar, didn't even notice that something inside the farm was dying. Not just an ox, but the sense of humanity itself. Because when we get used to ignoring suffering, even that of an animal, something inside us dies along with it. And what is most impressive is that the ox was still trying, even in the last few days, to get up. His muscles trembled, his body gave way, but he tried. As someone who still believes they can be seen, loved, recognized. Sometimes, at night, pedestrians said they heard a sound coming from the corral, a weak, constant moan, as if someone was crying softly so as not to disturb them. None of them approached. "It's just the good-eye old man making noise," they said. But you and I know that no one cries for no reason. That was his way of saying, "I'm still here," of asking someone, anyone, to notice him. And that is precisely what makes this story a mirror. Because deep down, we all want to be noticed. We all want someone to look at us and see more than appearance, more than function, more than utility. We want you to see the soul. But like the boss, many look but don't see. Many hear but do not listen. And that's why stories like this need to be told. Because the world is in too much of a hurry to feel, and silent pain continues to be the most ignored. When the boss finally realized it was already too late, he went to the field, looked at the ox's weak body and shook his head. No tears, no apparent regret, just that dry look of someone who has gotten used to losing without feeling it. But what he never knew was that that animal, even in his last moments, was still waiting for him. And that's when the story becomes almost unbearable to listen to, because waiting for someone who has already turned their back is the kind of pain that eats away at you. Time passed, the field followed, and life, as always, pretended nothing happened. But there are silences that don't die. There are stories that the wind blows away, but that the heart refuses to forget. And if you've made it this far, I want to ask you something. Comment below, "I heard his silence." I want to see who really heard this pain. This story is not over yet. What comes next will make you see the true face of ingratitude. Time doesn't stop, but for some, it simply loses meaning. And that's exactly what happened after those silent days. The ox was no longer the same, and neither was the boss, even if he didn't know it yet. Sometimes life takes care of showing ingratitude in a way that not even the hardest of hearts can ignore. The morning dawned grey, with the wind blowing low, bringing that smell of wet earth and melancholy. The field was covered in a light mist, and for a few moments everything seemed still. The ox was lying down as usual, but this time there was something different in the air. His gaze, previously full of timid hope, was distant, tired, resigned. He no longer expected to be remembered. I no longer expected to be called by name. It just existed, trapped between what was and what would never be again. The weak body trembled slightly, and the breathing was already short, almost imperceptible. Meanwhile, the boss was drinking coffee on the balcony, observing the countryside without really seeing it. The cup shook slightly in my hand, perhaps from the cold, perhaps from something else. Inside him, there was a discomfort that he couldn't name. A strange weight, a restlessness that made him look from time to time to the side where the ox used to work. But he quickly looked away, like someone avoiding the mirror of their own conscience. After all, who wants to face what they did or didn't do? That day, one of the pedestrians came close and said, "Boss, the ox isn't doing well. He's barely gotten up for 2 days." The man, without taking his eyes off the cup, replied dryly, "It's old. It'll soon die." Buy another one. It was just 3 words, but they resonated deeply. Buy another one, as if it were simple to replace years of loyalty, sweat, and sacrifice. The ox listened. He always listened. Even tired, even weak, that heart still understood. The sound of indifference cuts more than any whip. Later, as the sun began to fall, something changed within him. The wind grew colder, the sky heavier, and the ox, with the little strength he had left, tried to get up. His legs were shaking, his body was shaking, but he insisted. For a moment he managed to stand, took a deep breath and looked towards the farm. Maybe he wanted to see his boss one last time. Maybe he wanted to try again to be seen. But the man was no longer there, and it was at that moment that everything collapsed. His body gave way, the legs gave way, and the ox fell slowly, as if the whole world had become too heavy to carry. The sound of impact was dull, muffled, almost a whisper. The wind stopped, not even the birds sang. Lying on the floor, he was still breathing, slow, painful, with eyes fixed on the horizon. Every breath was a struggle, every second a thread of life that insisted on not going out. And it is at this point that the story stops being just about an animal, because who has never reached their own breaking point? That moment when the body and soul say, enough. That moment when everything you did, everything you gave, seems to have been worthless. The ox stayed there, between wanting to live and not being able to live anymore. He looked at the horizon as if searching for answers. Maybe he remembered the days when he was strong, when the boss called him with pride, when people still saw him as something more than a burden. But now there was only silence. The boss arrived at the field at the end in the afternoon. He saw the animal lying on the ground, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. There was something different in that dull look. It was as if the ox was looking at him one last time, without resentment, without hatred, just with a kind of sadness that only those who have been loyal can feel. The man stood still. The wind was blowing hard, kicking up dust, and for some reason, he couldn't move. For the first time, he felt the weight of regret. Not regret for what was done, but for what was never said. He wanted to get closer, but something inside him stopped him. Maybe shame, maybe guilt. He tried to hide his emotion, but the look gave it away. It was as if all the times he ignored that animal came back at once, like a silent charge. The pedestrian who accompanied him broke the silence. "I don't think he's going to make it, boss." But the boss didn't respond. He just stood there watching. And, for the first time, he seemed to see that ox as something more than a simple animal. He saw a companion, a reflection, a symbol of loneliness itself. The wind was still cold. The sky, now darkening, bore heavy clouds, and in the midst of this scenario, the ox let out one last breath, a low sound, almost imperceptible but full of meaning. It was as if he was saying, "I did my best." And the boss, even without wanting to admit it, felt something break inside him. Maybe it was the heart, maybe it was conscience. He knelt down with trembling hands and touched the ox's neck. The skin was already cold, the eyes were still, no reaction, just silence. And in that silence, everything he never said began to scream inside his head. He remembered when the ox was young, full of strength, dragging the plow under the sun, never backing down. He remembered the plentiful harvests, the money earned, the pride he felt in showing off that strong animal in front of others. And now, only emptiness remained. The man slowly stood up, looked around, and realized, perhaps for the first time, that the field was too quiet. No sound, no movement. It was as if the farm itself was mourning the loss. But regret came late. It always comes. He returned home in silence, without being able to eat dinner, without exchanging a word. At night, lying in bed, the sound of the wind sounded like the ox moaning. His conscience wouldn't let him sleep, and in the dark, those 3 words came back like an echo. Buy another one. But time doesn't come back. Ingratitude does not go away. The next day, the boss ordered the farmhands to bury the ox in a corner of the field, close to the river. He said not to leave the body in sight. But when the hole was closed, he stood there, looking at the mound of fresh earth. A heavy silence enveloped everything, and for the first time, he understood the meaning of the word abandonment. What the ox felt before it died, now it was he who felt it. Because life has a cruel way of teaching. Sometimes it makes you feel the pain that you ignored in others. The days passed and the field was never the same. The sound of the plough was now dragging, the wind seemed colder, and the master was silent. Some said he was different, more closed, more thoughtful. Others thought it was their fault. But the truth is that inside him something had broken. Every morning he passed near the place where the ox was buried. Sometimes it stopped. I stayed there, staring into space, remembering everything. It was as if he expected to see the animal appear again, to hear the familiar sound of its moo echoing across the field. But there was only silence, and over time, that silence began to speak. He spoke of regret, of ingratitude, of everything he lost by not seeing what was right in front of his eyes. He began to understand that the value of things is not in what they produce, but in what they represent. And that ox, now buried, represented everything he didn't know how to value. At night the man dreamed. I dreamed of the green field, of the sound of the plough, of the ox running strong and free. But in the middle of the dream something changed. The animal stopped, turned around slowly, and looked at him with the same sad eyes as at the end. He would wake up sweating, with his heart racing. It was conscience knocking on the door. Little by little, the boss began to lose his taste for things. The food no longer had flavor. The work was no longer exciting. The field seemed empty. And worst of all was the silence. A silence that accompanied him everywhere. He began to understand that what the ox felt before he died was the same as what he felt now. The weight of not being heard, of not being understood. Ingratitude has a price, and he was paying it. And it is at this point that the story touches the deepest, because it talks about the loss of what really matters. It's not just the death of the ox, it is the death of conscience. It is the moment when human beings realize, too late, that loyalty cannot return, that love cannot be bought, that time cannot forgive. The boss started avoiding people. I spent more time in the countryside, alone, looking at the horizon, like the ox did. Perhaps he sought the same silent forgiveness. One afternoon, sitting by the river, he picked up a stone and threw it into the water. The sound of the impact reminded him of something. A similar sound, the sound of the ox's body falling to the ground. His heart raced. "Sorry," he muttered softly. But the wind took the word away, and only the echo remained. He repeated 2, 3 times, "Sorry." And it was at that moment that he cried, for the first time in years. He cried not just for the ox, but for everything he ignored, for all the voices he didn't want to hear, for all the pain he pretended not to see. And that is the true breaking point, when the heart finally understands what pride has tried to hide for so long. If you've ever ignored someone who just wanted to be seen, or been ignored by someone who gave you everything, you understand exactly what this man felt. And now, I want you to comment below. I felt the weight of silence. Write this so I know that you are still with me, that this story really touched you. But don't leave yet, because what happens after that moment is what changes everything, and that's when true regret begins to take its toll. After that apology thrown to the wind, something changed in the boss, but the world continued, indifferent. The field, now silent, seemed larger, colder, as if the absence of a single animal had taken away something that no one could name. It wasn't just the ox's body that was missing there. It was the presence, the memory, the feeling. It was absence screaming where before there was only silence. The workers continued their work, but nothing was the same as before. One of them, the oldest, known for his toughness, stopped in front of the makeshift tomb, took off his hat, and bowed his head. I didn't say anything, he just stood there silent. Then he murmured, "I saw that he was different. I should have said something, done something." But he didn't. Nobody did. It's always like this. We only understand the value when we can no longer play, when there is no time to go back, when presence becomes a memory and the memory becomes a weight in the heart. And on that piece of land where the ox rested, not only some wildflowers grew, but also a shadow that grew in the master's eyes, the shadow of guilt. He started talking less. He spent hours looking at the fence, as if hoping that somehow the ox would return. Sometimes I would wake up at dawn and leave the house aimlessly. I would go to the place where he was buried and sit on the ground. I didn't cry. He just stood there with a blank face, trying to understand when he lost himself. People in the village started to notice. One neighbor commented to another, "The boss looks like a different man. Since the ox died, he is no longer the same. I heard that he talks to himself now. He carries an old cloth in his pocket, which was used to wipe the animal's sweat." The stories spread, but none was stronger than the truth that the boss carried inside his chest, the certainty that he could have done differently, that you ignored the signs, that even without words the ox asked for help, and he chose not to listen. One of the farmhand's daughters, that same child who one day asked why the ox was sad, grew up a little and started drawing. One day he left a piece of paper at the farm gate, a drawing of an ox with wings rising to the sky, with a tear running down. Below, the shaky sentence in colored pencil, "He just wanted to be loved." The boss held onto the drawing for days. He folded and unfolded it, as if that was the only thing linking him back to what he lost. At night, he looked at the sky and asked himself, would he forgive me? But the sky never responded. The void that the ox left was too deep. At the city fair, someone commented, "Remember that ox the boss had? Strong, beautiful, obedient. They say he died of sadness." Of sadness. Yeah. Nobody took care of him anymore. He got old and was thrown into the corner, and they say that the boss still hasn't gotten over it. The story began to spread, and not as a simple loss of an animal, but as a symbol, a reminder. Because everyone knows someone who was left aside when they could no longer give what they used to offer with ease. A forgotten father, a neglected mother, an abandoned friend, a discarded worker. The ox became them all. And the boss, well, he began to realize that it wasn't just the death of the ox that hurt, but what it represented. He saw that the coldness he used for years was the same one that separated him from everything that really mattered. That his arrogance slowly erased the only soul who never betrayed him. And worst of all, now he heard silence. The same silence that I previously ignored. He stopped hiring new oxen. He began to treat those who remained with more attention. He gave them names, he played carefully, I watched more, but deep down, everything seemed to be a failed attempt to correct what was already written, because there are pains that, and they have no remedy, and there are blames that we carry forever. If you've ever lost someone, or even an animal, and only later realized everything it meant, you understand this feeling, you understand this weight, and if this touched you, comment below, "I felt his absence." Or if you want to open your heart, share in the comments. Have you ever ignored a silent cry for help, whether in the form of gesture, look, attitude? Comment, "I understand now." I want to see who is really feeling this story with me. After everything that happened, after all the silence, the guilt, the absence, the pain that came too late, the boss began to realize a truth that many only discover when it is too late. He began to see the world with different eyes. Every corner of the farm seemed to carry the memory of the ox. The wooden fence that he once leaned against to rest, the tree where he took shelter from the sun, the dirt path that his hooves opened over the years. Everything, absolutely everything, spoke of him. But he spoke quietly. He spoke the way pain speaks, with cruel delicacy, and it is at this point that the story stops being just about him, about the ox, the boss, the farm. She becomes a mirror. It becomes a calling. Because often, the people around us are also silently screaming, just waiting for someone to notice. Sometimes the cry for help comes in the form of a lost look. Other times it's an "it's okay" said too quickly, or a hug that lasts a second longer than usual. And almost always, we ignore it. We rush by, busy, distracted. We think we have time, that tomorrow everything will be the same, but it won't. And when tomorrow comes, it may be too late. Too late to listen, too late to care, too late to do anything different. How many times have you noticed someone has changed but didn't ask why? How many times has someone who has always been strong started to shut up and you thought it was just tiredness, stress, a phase? How many times have you screamed inside yourself hoping someone would notice and no one did? That's where the essence of this story lies. Because deep down, the ox represents every forgotten person, every unappreciated gesture, every ignored love. It represents the sacrifices that no one sees. The father who leaves early and returns late without ever hearing a thank you. The mother who takes care of everyone but feels invisible. The friend who is always there but never remembered. The worker who gives his all and is discarded when he no longer performs. This is the part of the story that hurts the most, when we understand that true abandonment is not physical, it's emotional. It's being surrounded by people and still feeling like no one sees you, that no one listens to you, that no one cares. And the boss, now alone, understood this with all his might. He began to see the world with more sensitivity. And you know what hurt most? It was remembering that he had every chance. He had time, he had the opportunity, he had the signs, but he chose to ignore it. And when the choice is to ignore, life takes its toll, charged with silence, with regret, missing what doesn't come back. If you're watching this right now, stop and think who around you might need to be heard. Who do you think is too strong but might be holding it all inside? Who do you love but never said clearly? Sometimes life gives you a gentle nudge. Other times, it gives you a shock. This story is one of those shocks, a silent slap from reality, a reminder that the bonds we build need to be cared for every day. It's not after, it's not when there's time, and now, it's today. You will never regret saying, "I understand you." It will never hurt to have offered a hug, a gesture, a sincere listen. What hurts is what gets stuck in the throat, what was not said, which was ignored, what died inside us without anyone noticing. Remember the boss, looking at the ox's grave with eyes full of regret. Remember the silence that was louder than any words. Remember the child's drawing with the phrase, "He just wanted to be loved." How many times do we repeat this without realizing it? How many people around you just want to be loved, but you don't say anything? This is the time to change. This is the time to listen with your heart, to look into the eyes, to pay attention. Don't wait until it's too late. Because when it is, there's no point shouting or crying or apologizing anymore. The story of the ox is a metaphor, yes, but it's also real. It's felt. It is experienced by thousands of people who suffer in silence, who carry the weight of life in silence, waiting just for a gesture. So, if this story touched you, made you think, reminded you of someone, do one thing for me now. Comment below, "I'll listen before it's too late." Or, if you prefer, write the name of someone you love, someone who might need to hear something nice today. Let's transform this space in the comments into a place of affection, of real connection, because the world needs more people who listen and fewer people who just look. And don't leave the video yet. What comes next will show you how one gesture can change everything.